Hi guys, me again. I am excited about this week's episode because we talked about Rudy Gernreich in the last episode and his use of clothing in order to make political statements. And so much of the clothing that we wear is impacted by the surroundings, the events that are going on around us. So I wanted to make this week's topic war and peace. And you know, it's interesting when you think back to the infusion of wartime elements into clothing. Sometimes it's because fabric can be considered fashionable, or sometimes it's to actually make a very strong political statement. So we have a few examples of both war and peace. And I'm going to show you, I guess we'll start with the first thing that's on the mannequin, which is a three-piece Moschino. It's a bustier bodice with a pocket. The buttons are hearts, which is kind of profound. And he softened the military aspect of the ensemble by adding Tyrolean kind of floral trim. I like this piece because he softened the harshness of war by using heart-shaped buttons, this wonderful floral trim which has a Tyrolean feel to it. It's very feminine, even though it's utilizing graphic camouflage, wartime camouflage. So this is the first piece that I wanted to share with you. We have a lot of other companies, the Great China Wall, which was not known in by the masses. They would take pieces and repurpose them, overdye them, embellish them with rhinestones, and their pieces were actually quite expensive in their day in the 90s and early 2000s. And this one's kind of a little more subtle than some of the other pieces we have, but there's kind of the khaki green on the inside. And then I pulled this piece, which is by Philippe Plein. I think he was a designer for Plein Sud, but I'm not 100% sure. Took a military style jacket and embellished it with rhinestones and this kind of POW symbol in the back. But my favorite piece, which is the oldest, is this Japanese kimono from World War I. And you can see the aircraft that was used at the time. The image on this with Mount Fuji is pretty incredible, I have to say. I don't think I've ever seen anything like it. And I'm hoping that this goes into a museum where lots of people can see it, because it is propaganda, I would imagine, from that time period. I pulled also this repurposed Army, or Air Force I should say, shirt with a drawstring waist, really cute 90s or early 2000 skirt. And then Jack's, which was a store that we actually talked about in the last episode, has this military-inspired midi shirt that's been turned into a shirt dress. The fabric is shark skin, which is an acetate, and I really like this. It's classic. So other things that I pulled that are reminiscent of war or politics are these bangles, which I actually bought in Laos 2 years ago. They were made by undetonated explosives. There was a street fair of sorts where people were selling crafts, and I bought these because it just is profound. I mean, there's so many undetonated explosives in that area of the world, and they took something horrible and turned it into something decorative and useful. So that's that. And I threw in a few political things. This is a Hubert Humphrey tie. And this tie, which I think I want to wear from now until Election Day next year. The importance of voting to exercise our right that people have died for. And now as we move into politics and peace, we have Jane Fonda for president, probably from 1968. I have several of these treasures unworn. They were made, ironically, in Italy. And then Moschino, yet again, coming out with a statement for peace with his t-shirt. I don't know what year this was made. This is an incredible, I bought this in Asheville, North Carolina. It's suede, two-tone, very hippie, short overalls. And I don't think I've actually ever seen one in person until I got this one. I've seen many similar ones in photographs. And last but not least, this wonderful Moschino. When you wear it, you will clearly see a peace sign in the back. This knit shift is from the 70s, so I'm sure this was made during the Vietnam War. Interesting facts about the peace symbol. Its origins began in Britain, according to the Designers for Peace project. It was an anti-war and anti-violence organization. It was created by a gentleman by the name of Gerald Holton in 1958 for the Campaign for Nuclear Disarmament. So an interesting fact about the peace symbol and Gerald Holton's estate, he never copyrighted it, and his original intention for that symbol was for art and posters, but he really didn't want it on fashion. So funny how his intentions were not followed through. So I would be remiss if we didn't also include accessories that were symbols of peace and war. One of the things that I bought many years ago was this necklace with pot metal guns that I believe were from Cracker Jack boxes. Those of you old enough to remember, Cracker Jack is a candied popcorn, and in the olden days there used to be a surprise inside the box. So I would guess that this, with the patina of the guns and the actual casting, that this is a World War II. These guns are from World War II, and the necklace was probably made maybe in the 70s or 80s, but pretty cool. And then as we fast forward to the 70s, bullet belts were really popular in the counterculture, and these are bullet shells, and you can see that it's actually incredible construction on this one. It opens with this one, and it's actually a beautiful construction, but not when you know what it is. It fascinates me. The construction, I would love to know who the artist was on this one, but there's no signature. And then I also brought another Cracker Jack, but this was 1980s necklace that has, if you ever as a child had caps that you would shoot off on toy guns, these are guns that could use caps. It's not in perfect condition, but I thought it was an interesting thing to have. And last but not least, when I was traveling in, I think it was in North Carolina, I came across a craft fair, and there was this woman who was selling these incredibly beautiful necklaces that are made with different caliber bullet shells, and she capped the ends of the bullets with onyx beads. So I bought 3 different necklaces. This is a larger caliber, and then these 2 smaller caliber, and it's pretty recent. I mean, I bought this, I think, 3 years ago, so it has no relevance to any kind of wartime event happening at that moment in history. But it's taking something horrible and turning it into something really beautiful. Also wanted to mention that camouflage was solidified in history as far as cultural significance because of the Vietnam War. And by the 1980s, military style and military aesthetic was very much woven into everyday American life. I mean, you can just walk down the street and see it. The thing about military fashion is that it was designed to be originally to be utilitarian, to be functional, and to also be camouflage. And so many of these things actually have all 3 ingredients, but when you water it down into fashion, it definitely doesn't carry over all 3 elements. So that's it for War and Peace. And for those of you aspiring designers that are watching, please know that your canvas is your garment, and you can say and do some pretty powerful things with the things that you create, as evidenced by these pieces here. And many of them will withstand the test of time. So, drum roll please, because this week's show off is, it's not a garment, because part of my passion and collecting is also textiles. And I came across this incredible piece that's pretty wordy, but the message on it is very relevant today, even 80-something years later. It is this solid, beaded on a loom, Creed of Science. And the title is actually rather misleading, because it's really about love, truth, fairness, looking at beauty and art and nature, cultivating the mind. It's a really gorgeous message, and this is a piece that I'm going to frame and actually hang in my home. But oftentimes when you see pieces that are beaded in large stretches, this is a loom that was probably 5 inches wide, so you'll see 3 strips that have been sewn together. And you can see the warp at the end. So it's very much a textile, and it's dated 1933 at the bottom, with the person that wrote this or said this. His name is Robert G. Ingersoll. So I know it's not clothing, but it's pretty powerful and wonderful, so I wanted to share this with you.